What's happening, guys? So, I've been thinking, with us recently talking about the origin of Al Simmons, the Spawn that most people know. And I know quite a few of you have been wanting me to get into Spawn for a minute now, I know. But for me, it's just two things. One, it's been a while since I've read Spawn comics. And I mean a good while, like years. So I've been doing some brushing up, but it's a lot. But because you guys have been asking and we're getting closer to a film coming out, I figured why not just test the waters, talking about them a little bit, and just see kind of where it goes from there. But the second thing that I was thinking about is that now in 2018, I kind of feel like not a lot of people know who Spawn is. And I'm pretty sure that everybody watching this video on the day that it posts, that subscribe to the page, shout out to the notification squad, I'm sure all of you guys know who Spawn is, as far as Al Simmons. But aside from the hardcore fans and those who were like generally interested back in the day, like aside from those two groups, I feel like your newer comic book fans that, and when I say newer, I mean even started reading comics probably like in 2008 or something like that, or even a few years after that, and they're probably intrigued by the MCU and started picking up comics after that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but because of that, I really feel like there's a huge number of the comic book fans of today that really just don't know Spawn. And they might even just say that they do just to save face and not look crazy, or because they feel embarrassed that they don't know. But that's mainly why I did the origin video earlier this week, to possibly familiarize some people, but also lay the groundwork to do a couple Spawn videos talking about some of the comics that I really liked. And much like I said, just test the water and see if you guys want to talk more Spawn in the future. So with that being said, put on your brown pants, because in this video, I want to talk about Spawn, the Dark Ages. And this is a story that takes place like in your 11th century, not long after the beginning of the Crusades. And what makes it very interesting is that it's a story being told with some facts, but then it takes that history and it blends it together with the Spawn mythology. Because in the actual crusades that started in the year 1095, you had your Western European Christians who were fighting against Muslim armies from Arabia who had taken much of their land some 400 years prior. And so in the year 1095, when Pope Urban II called for the first crusade, he called for European knights left and right to reclaim the land that these Muslim armies from Arabia had taken. And in this particular story, you had your Black Knight, also known as Lord Covenant. And for Lord Covenant, it was much like the history books, because in the actual crusade, these knights that went to fight, they were only fighting for spiritual merit. They weren't being paid, they were mainly fighting to get back their land, primarily Jerusalem. And Lord Covenant truly believed in fighting to get that land back by any means necessary, and he believed that whatever actions he took, if he were to die in the field, that the heavens would just pardon him and he would just get a pass because his intentions were pure. And many of the men that went with Lord Coven, they just saw it as an opportunity to get spoils. But Lord Coven was the real deal. And so now the way that we're kind of thrown into this, we're given the narration of a kid named Pevin, and he's playing hide and seek with his friends, and we're not really told how old Pevin is at this time. But after the video, I'd like a few of you guys to guess down in the comments. But while him and his friends are playing this game, he comes across this huge dude who's just pretty much looking for directions, almost as if he's waiting for somebody. And he asks Pevin whose castle is that in the distance. Pevin tells him, well, it's this Lord Covenant guy who was gone before I was born. And Pevin said he heard it was haunted. And the mysterious dude is like, nah, not yet, but it will be. And then he gives the kid an apple. He tells Pevin to tell no one of their conversation. Pevin's friends find him, and then the mysterious dude is just gone, like without a trace. Almost as if he was never there to begin with. But much further east you have the Baron and his captain at arms, Guy de Blanc. And as far as Guy, like, don't let the pretty face fool you, like he be bringing heads back. And in his servitude to Baron Revelin, whether it's collecting taxes or in this case bringing back a certain relic to these three witches, de Blanc, he may enjoy like the head rolling part a bit more than he should. But the Baron needs de Blanc to deliver because he's made a deal with these witches that if he gives them what they want, then they'll heal his wife who's currently plagued with illness. But it's around this time that a Spawn is birthed. And this is not like a peaceful or a quiet birth, like it's pretty loud and pretty grotesque at the same time. And when this Spawn arrives in the cemetery, like these dudes go to check it out, and man, it's like wrong place at the wrong time. And between the sound of him screaming and the sound of these three dudes getting slaughtered, like the screaming and the wailing, it's heard from a great distance. And just as a result, different people are making their assumptions of what happened and others are going to investigate. And amongst those assumptions, some people are saying it's just wolves, others are saying the devil has come on earth. Like, keep in mind, during the Crusades, you had some people who felt so hopeless that many of them would reach for any type of story of hope or belief, or even disbelief as a result of despair. And much of that hope for a lot of people didn't come back to the end of the first or the third crusade. And at this point in time, with it taking place early in the first crusade, far and wide you also had a group of people just believing what they wanted to believe. And with all this commotion coming from the cemetery and people making up what they wanted to believe of what it was, what was actually happening there was the rebirth of the Black Knight. And just like any Spawn, when he first arrives, when he's first reborn, he has no memory of what happened or what deal he made to get here. He doesn't know who he was, and he has even the furthest clue of what he is. And much like a newborn baby, he has to learn to speak all over again, which doesn't take him too long. You know, a few issues in, he's using full sentences. But it's more so the adjustment to his new body that he's just figuring out. And because he woke up in rage and confusion, the guys that he ran into not long after he first arrived, they were slain not out of any malice, but once again, it was more so wrong place, wrong time. But as it turned out, Guy DeBlanc came to this nearby cabin to investigate the murders from the graveyard. And like I mentioned before, he takes pleasure in just walking over people. And at the first opportunity, he just kills a man for trying to stand up for someone else. But little did he know that soon as he took that guy out, the Black Knight came through there, and he didn't attack him first. Like, he saved Guy for last, but not so he can go back and tell a message. But he cut off like half his face. Yeah, like true savagery, like level 1 million. And it's almost like he wanted him to live just to make a statement. But after leaving from that cabin and heading to somewhere more familiar, on DeBlanc's horse by the way, took half his face and all his ride. But by heading to somewhere familiar, he made his way back to his castle, and waiting for him there was the same old man that was anticipating his arrival, waiting for this certain amount of years to pass by. And his name is Cagliostro. Yup, the same Cagliostro who up to 800 years later would mentor Al Simmons when he became Spawn. And for Lord Covenant, he would pretty much play that same role for the most part, because when he met Al, the conversation was a bit different. It was more so, I'm gonna train you and you make your decision what you're gonna do. But at this point in time, when Cog introduces himself, he's like, I'm here to teach you because this is the deal that you made. And the Black Knight still barely able to form words. Like, at this point, the most he can say is, who am I? Because much like Al Simmons, or I'll even say in his case even worse, because for Lord Covenant, the little bit that's coming back to him on his own, it's very minimal. Like, before he came across Cog, he put little to nothing together on his own, and he was desperately in dire need of answers. And Cagliostro obliged. And when this happened, it was countless moments from his past happening all at the same time, being poured into his mind. All the battles, all the guilt, everything being poured in at one time. And I don't know, I kind of feel like Cog could have kind of just eased up on it a little bit, because you could just imagine someone whose mind has been wiped and literally has like the mind of a child, like just blank. And you're gonna take that mind, you're gonna pour in all the gore, all the bloodshed, you're gonna pour in the pride and the guilt at the same time, and then top it off with him reliving his death and losing his very soul. Like, it was too much, he couldn't take it, and in response he just punched Cagliostro and took off into the wilderness, cursing the heavens, cursing hell, and just weeping in devastation. But that was only the beginning. Yeah, pretty dark, but yeah, that's Spawn for you. And like with the issues that cover the Dark Ages, like as far as the substantial amount of time that it took him to be able to speak, like what I mentioned in the last video talking about Spawn's origin, Al Simmons Spawn, but with now going back to the Black Knight in the Spawn Dark Age series, it kind of makes me think of some of the stuff we've heard about the film, with Todd McFarlane saying that the new Spawn won't be speaking. And I still believe it to be what I mentioned before, that he'll just be a few words and he'll probably have a few lines here and there in the film. But even more so than just that, with going back and reading Spawn the Dark Ages, I kind of feel like they'll kind of take that route, with him just taking longer to be able to speak and getting used to his new body. And that's not to say that the new film will take place during the Crusades or anything like that, but I think they'll kind of take some of the more grittier, or the tougher learning curve I should say, that this version of Spawn had to go through, just as an example. So when we see him finally get his flashbacks and become who we know him to be, there's a deeper connection with the character. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Smash that like button if you learned something new, and we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.